January 21st, 2008, 3:47 p.m., Los Angeles, California. Inside the Church of Scientology's Celebrity Center, phones are ringing off the hook. Not normal calls, automated, relentless, thousands of them. The switchboard lights up like a Christmas tree, every line jammed, every extension screaming for attention. Receptionists pick up to hear nothing but Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up, looping endlessly. Hang up. Another call. Same song, again. In the IT department, someone notices the servers are dying. Website down. Email servers crashing. Bandwidth maxed out. A distributed denial of service attack. A digital flood so massive it's drowning every system they have. The church's official website, Scientology.org, displays nothing but error messages. Visitors trying to learn about Dianetics get blank screens instead. Outside, on Hollywood Boulevard, something stranger is happening. People in Guy Fawkes masks stand silently across the street. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They don't chant, don't shout, just stand there holding signs. Knowledge is free. We are anonymous. Some film on handheld cameras. Others hand out flyers to confuse tourists. Inside, church officials watch through tinted windows, phones dead in their hands, websites offline, their digital infrastructure burning. Someone leaked the video, the Tom Cruise video. The one where he talks about Scientology saving the world, his eyes wild with conviction, jumping on couches in his mind. The church spent years keeping that footage locked down, threatened lawsuits against anyone who posted it, used copyright claims like weapons. But you can't copyright claim anonymous, because anonymous isn't a person, isn't an organization. Can't be sued, can't be threatened, can't be stopped. Anonymous is an idea, a swarm. A digital hive mind that just declared war on one of the world's most powerful and secretive organizations. The Church of Scientology thought they could silence the internet. They were catastrophically wrong. This is the story of Project Chanology, the operation that transformed Anonymous from internet trolls into cyber activists. The moment when a church that silenced critics for decades met an enemy that couldn't be silenced, couldn't be intimidated, couldn't be stopped. But here's the question that would define everything. How does a leaderless collective of hackers, pranksters, and activists take on a billion-dollar organization with unlimited legal resources and a history of destroying anyone who challenged them? And what happens when the fight for free speech becomes the internet's first real war? This is the story of how Anonymous went to war with Scientology and changed the internet forever. To understand Project Chanology, you need to understand two things: the Church of Scientology and the place where Anonymous was born. The Church of Scientology was founded in 1954 by science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard. By 2008, it had become a global organization worth billions, with celebrity members like Tom Cruise and John Travolta, and a reputation for aggressively silencing critics. The church didn't just sue people who spoke against them, they destroyed them. Operation Snow White in the 1970s saw Scientology members infiltrate 136 government agencies to steal and destroy documents. When the IRS tried to revoke their tax-exempt status, Scientology filed 2,500 lawsuits against the agency until they gave up. Critics called it a cult. The church called it religious persecution. But everyone agreed on one thing: you didn't mess with Scientology. They had money, lawyers, private investigators. They would bury you in litigation, follow you, harass you until you broke or went silent. For decades, it worked. Then came 4chan. 4chan was, and still is, the internet's ID, an anonymous image board where millions gathered to share memes, jokes, and chaos. No registration required, no usernames. Everyone was anonymous. It was the Wild West of the internet, a place where pranks were art and nothing was sacred. Out of 4chan's B board, Random, the most chaotic corner of the site, came the concept of anonymous as a collective identity. When 4chan users organized pranks or raids, they did it under the banner of Anonymous, not a group, not an organization, just an idea that anyone could claim. They'd raid online games, prank call radio stations, engage in what they called lulls, laughs at someone else's expense. It was juvenile, often cruel, always chaotic. But in January 2008, something changed. The Church of Scientology leaked a promotional video featuring Tom Cruise. In it, the actor spoke passionately about Scientology's mission, using insider jargon that sounded bizarre to outsiders. We are the authorities on getting people off drugs. We are the authorities on the mind. We are the authorities on improving conditions. The video was meant for Scientologists only, but someone leaked it online. It went viral immediately. People mocked it, remixed it, turned it into memes. The internet did what the internet does. It laughed. The church didn't laugh. They issued copyright takedown notices to YouTube, Gawker, and every site hosting the video. Used the Digital Millennium Copyright Act like a sledgehammer. Videos disappeared. Sites complied. The church's lawyers were efficient, ruthless, unstoppable, but they made one critical mistake. They tried to censor the internet. On January 14, 2008, someone on 4chan's B-board posted a message. The Church of Scientology has for too long been in the shadows manipulating and controlling. It's time we did something about it. The response was immediate, explosive. Anonymous, the shapeless collective of internet trolls and pranksters, decided to declare war. Not for a cause, not initially, but because Scientology had tried to control information on the internet. And if there's one thing Anonymous hated, it was censorship. They called it Project Chanology. And the Church of Scientology had no idea what was about to hit them. January 21st, 2008. Evening. A video appears on YouTube. No person on screen, just text. And a computerized voice that sounds like something from a dystopian future. Hello, Scientology. We are Anonymous. The message is 9 minutes long. Cold, methodical, threatening in its calm delivery. Over the years, we have been watching you. Your campaigns of misinformation, your suppression of dissent, your litigious nature. All of these things have caught our eye. With the leakage of your latest propaganda video into mainstream circulation, the extent of your malign influence over those who trust you has been made clear to us. The voice continues, emotionless but definitive. Anonymous has therefore decided that your organization should be destroyed. For the good of your followers, for the good of mankind, and for our own enjoyment, we shall proceed to expel you from the internet and systematically dismantle the Church of Scientology in its present form. Then comes the line that would define everything. Knowledge is free. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us. The video ends with the Guy Fawkes mask, the symbol from V for Vendetta, filling the screen. Within hours, it had hundreds of thousands of views. Within days, millions. The Church of Scientology's initial response was dismissive. This was the internet. Trolls, kids in basements. They dealt with critics before. Serious journalists, former members, government agencies. What could a bunch of anonymous pranksters possibly do? They were about to find out. The attacks began immediately. Distributed denial of service attacks, DDoS, flooded Scientology websites with so much traffic they collapsed. Scientology.org went down. Then the websites of Scientology centers in Los Angeles, London, Hamburg, Sydney. One by one, they crashed under the weight of coordinated digital assaults. Phone lines were jammed. The Rickroll calls were just the beginning. Anonymous members used automated systems to flood Scientology centers worldwide with calls. Receptionists couldn't function. Legitimate inquiries couldn't get through. The organization's communication infrastructure was under siege. Black faxes, pages of solid black ink designed to drain toner cartridges, were sent to Scientology offices around the world. A petty attack, sure, but effective, expensive, disruptive. But these were just the opening salvos. Anonymous began digging, researching, compiling. They found leaked Scientology documents, the operating thetan, levels, secret teachings that cost members hundreds of thousands of dollars to access. Anonymous posted them everywhere. WikiLeaks, file-sharing sites, forums, blogs, the church's most guarded secrets, the mythology about Xenu and Thetans and space opera cosmology that Scientologists weren't supposed to learn until they'd paid their way up the hierarchy. All of it dumped online for free. Knowledge is free. The church fought back the only way it knew how. Lawyers, cease and desist letters, copyright claims, threats of lawsuits. They'd used these tactics successfully for decades. Individuals buckled under legal pressure. Websites took down content rather than face litigation. But Anonymous wasn't an individual, wasn't a website, wasn't a target you could sue. Sue one anonymous member, 100 more appeared. Take down one website hosting leaked documents, 10 more went up. It was like fighting smoke, like punching water. The church was used to enemies with faces, with addresses, with assets to seize and reputations to destroy. Anonymous had none of those things, and that terrified them. By late January, the digital attacks had evolved into something else, something the church hadn't anticipated: physical protests. On February 10, 2008, chosen strategically as the birthday of Lisa McPherson, a Scientologist who died under suspicious circumstances in church care, Anonymous called for worldwide protests outside Scientology centers. They called it a global raid. The church prepared for the worst: violent extremists, dangerous radicals. They alerted local police, beefed up security, warned members to stay inside. What showed up instead was stranger than anyone expected. Hundreds of people, then thousands, in Guy Fawkes masks, standing silently outside Scientology buildings in over 100 cities worldwide: Los Angeles, London, Toronto, Sydney, Berlin. They didn't storm the buildings, didn't attack anyone, just stood there, peaceful, creepy, holding signs. Scientology kills. Honk if you hate Scientology. The cake is a lie, because Anonymous couldn't resist a meme reference even during serious activism. The media showed up: CNN, BBC, major news outlets covering what looked like the internet coming to life. Reporters tried to interview protesters, but they wouldn't give names, wouldn't remove masks, just repeated the same message: we are anonymous. The church's PR department went into overdrive, called them terrorists, cyber criminals, said they were dangerous, that the masks proved they had something to hide. But the optics were damaging. Here was this powerful organization, with its fortress-like buildings and celebrity members, being protested by ordinary people in masks. It looked David versus Goliath. It looked like the church was scared. And they were, because this wasn't going away. The protests continued. Monthly raids became a regular occurrence. Every 10th of the month, Anonymous showed up. The church tried to ignore them, tried to intimidate them, tried to photograph them to identify them later. The masks made that impossible. By March 2008, Project Chanology had evolved beyond simple trolling. Former Scientologists, people who'd left the church and stayed silent for years out of fear, began reaching out to Anonymous, offering information, documentation, testimony. Anonymous became a shield. If you spoke out against Scientology under the Anonymous banner, the church couldn't target you specifically, couldn't sue you into silence, couldn't send private investigators after you. The harassment tactics that had worked for decades suddenly had no target, and the Church of Scientology, for the first time in its history, didn't know what to do. March 2008. The Church of Scientology is bleeding. Not money, they still have plenty of that. Not members, the core believers remain loyal. But something more valuable in the digital age: control of their narrative. For decades, Scientology operated in shadows. Secret documents stayed secret. Critics stayed silent. The public knew the celebrity names, Cruz, Travolta, but little about the organization's inner workings. The church liked it that way. Information was power, and they controlled the information. Anonymous shattered that control. Every week brought new leaks: internal documents, training manuals, price lists showing it cost members $300,000 to reach operating Thetan Level 8. Testimony from former members about disconnection. The church's policy of forcing members to cut contact with family who left or criticized Scientology. The mainstream media, which had largely avoided covering Scientology due to fear of litigation, suddenly had cover. If Anonymous was already leaking everything, if protests were happening in broad daylight, reporting on it wasn't sticking your neck out, it was covering the news. CNN ran segments, the BBC aired documentaries. The St. Petersburg Times, now Tampa Bay Times, launched The Truth Rundown, a comprehensive investigation into church abuses. Reporters interviewed ex-members who'd been too afraid to speak before, but now felt protected by the chaos Anonymous created. The church's strategy of litigation and intimidation worked when critics were isolated individuals. But when everyone was anonymous, when sources were masked, when leaks came from everywhere and nowhere, their playbook was useless. Inside Scientology's Office of Special Affairs, the department responsible for handling critics and suppressive persons, panic was setting in. They tried everything. Infiltration attempts. Scientology members joined anonymous IRC channels, tried to blend in, gather intelligence. Some were caught immediately, their speech patterns too formal, their questions too specific. Others got deeper, but Anonymous's chaotic, decentralized structure meant there was nothing to infiltrate. No leaders to compromise, no central planning, just thousands of people coordinating through message boards and IRC channels, legal threats. The church sent cease and desist letters to ISPs hosting anonymous websites, sued individuals they could identify. But for every site taken down, 5 more appeared. And the lawsuits generated more publicity, more outrage, more protesters, counter-protests. The church bussed in members to stand outside during anonymous protests, filming demonstrators, trying to intimidate them. But Anonymous adapted, wore masks better, stayed on public property, knew their legal rights. Some started carrying cameras to film the Scientologists filming them. The optics remained terrible for the church. Private investigators. The church hired firms to identify anonymous members, follow them, dig up dirt. It worked in isolated cases. A few protesters were identified, received threatening letters, backed off. But the movement was too big, too distributed. For every person they scared away, 10 more showed up. The church was fighting a hydra. By June 2008, Project Chanology had achieved something unprecedented. It made opposing Scientology mainstream and relatively safe. Mark Bunker, a journalist who'd covered Scientology abuses for years and faced constant harassment, suddenly found himself with allies. Tori Chrisman, a former high-ranking Scientologist who left and became a critic, no longer felt isolated. Anonymous created an umbrella under which critics could organize. The monthly protests grew larger. In Los Angeles, hundreds showed up. In London, they gathered outside the church's UK headquarters. In Clearwater, Florida, Scientology's spiritual headquarters, protesters marched through streets the church essentially controlled. The church tried to paint them as terrorists, dangerous extremists. But the images told a different story. Peaceful protesters in Guy Fawkes masks holding signs, standing silently while Scientology security guards filmed them. The masks became iconic. V for Vendetta had given Anonymous a symbol, a face for the faceless. The grinning, mustachioed visage of Guy Fawkes, a revolutionary who tried to blow up Parliament in 1605, now represented digital resistance. Time Warner, which owned the rights to the mask's image, saw sales explode. Hot Topic couldn't keep them in stock. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A symbol of anti-corporate rebellion was making a corporation rich. Anonymous laughed about it, then bought more masks. But beneath the memes and the masks, something serious was happening. Anonymous was discovering that activism could be more than lulz, that organizing for a cause felt different than organizing for chaos. Project Chanology attracted people who weren't typical 4chan users. Former Scientologists seeking justice, free speech advocates, ordinary people disturbed by the church's practices. The movement began splitting. Some Anonymous members wanted to keep it pure, chaotic, leaderless, driven by lulz. Others wanted structure, goals, strategy. They started calling themselves Chanologists, distinguishing themselves from broader anonymous operations. Debates raged on IRC channels and forums. What were they trying to accomplish? Destroy the church entirely? Force reform? Simply expose abuse? Different factions wanted different things. Some focused on helping people leave Scientology. Others wanted legal investigations. Some just wanted to keep trolling because it was funny. The beautiful, terrible thing about Anonymous was that all of these could happen simultaneously. There was no central command to argue over strategy. Everyone just did what they thought was right, or what they thought was funny, sometimes both. By late 2008, Project Chanology had forced real change. Several countries opened investigations into Scientology's practices. France convicted the church of organized fraud. Germany increased scrutiny. The IRS, which had granted Scientology tax-exempt status after the church's decades-long harassment campaign, began reconsidering. More importantly, the internet learned something. Organized digital activism could work. That a decentralized swarm of anonymous individuals could challenge powerful organizations. That the mask offered protection. The tactics developed during Chanology, DDoS attacks, information warfare, coordinated protests, the Guy Fawkes mask, would be used again. Arab Spring protests, Occupy Wall Street, WikiLeaks operations. Every major digital activist movement that followed borrowed from the Chanology playbook. But success created tensions. As Project Chanology evolved from raid to movement, as protesters traded memes for activism, As the operation became less about lulz and more about justice, 4chan's B-board began turning against it. Moral fags, they called the serious activists, people who cared about causes instead of chaos, who wanted Anonymous to stand for something instead of nothing. The split was inevitable. You can't sustain a movement on irony and anonymity forever. Eventually, people want credit, want leadership, want to actually accomplish something measurable. Project Chanology was beginning to fracture, but the damage to Scientology was done. The Church of Scientology still stands, still operates, still has billions in assets and celebrity endorsers. But something fundamental has changed. For the first time in decades, they're on the defensive. Membership numbers, always closely guarded, appear to be declining. The church claims millions of members worldwide, but leaked documents and investigative reports suggest the real number is closer to 50,000 active participants. Recruitment has slowed. Public perception has soured. Google Scientology, and the first page of results isn't promotional material anymore. It's exposés, leaked documents, testimony from former members, news coverage of abuse allegations. The church spent years trying to control their online presence through SEO manipulation and copyright claims. Anonymous made that impossible. The protests continue, though smaller now. The initial wave of thousands has settled into a dedicated core of hundreds. Every month in cities around the world, masked protesters still show up outside Scientology centers. Some are anonymous members. Others are former Scientologists. Some are just ordinary people who learned about the church's practices and decided to stand against them. The masks remain. Always the masks. Inside the church, the Office of Special Affairs has shifted strategy. They can't stop Anonymous through traditional means, so they've pivoted to damage control. Aggressive PR campaigns, celebrity testimonials, attempts to rebrand as victims of religious persecution. It works with their core membership. True believers double down. But to the wider public, the veneer of mystery and power has cracked. Scientology now looks less like a religion and more like what its critics always said it was. A business masquerading as a church. A cult with good lawyers. The documents Anonymous leaked, the OT levels, the Xenu story, the internal pricing, removed the mystique. Once people knew what Scientology actually taught at its highest levels, the pitch became harder to sell. Space opera mythology about alien souls trapped in volcanoes 75 million years ago might work when it's a closely guarded secret revealed only after years of expensive training. It sounds ridiculous when it's a meme on Reddit, but Project Chanology's real impact wasn't just on Scientology. It was on Anonymous itself. The operation proved that coordinated digital activism could affect real change, that a leaderless collective could sustain a campaign for months, that the tactics of hacktivism, DDoS attacks, information leaks, coordinated protests, could pressure even powerful organizations, and other people were paying attention. In 2010, Anonymous launched Operation Payback, targeting companies that withdrew services from WikiLeaks after pressure from the US government. MasterCard, Visa, PayPal all suffered DDoS attacks that cost millions in lost transactions. In 2011, Anonymous supported Arab Spring protests, helping activists in Tunisia and Egypt evade government censorship. They took down government websites, provided tools to circumvent internet shutdowns, leaked internal communications. By 2011, Anonymous had become a global phenomenon. Time magazine listed the protester as Person of the Year with the Guy Fawkes mask on the cover. Occupy Wall Street protesters wore the masks. Anti-government demonstrations worldwide adopted the symbol. The mask that started as a 4chan meme during a raid on a controversial church had become the face of global digital resistance. But success brought problems. Law enforcement agencies began taking Anonymous seriously. The FBI launched investigations. Arrests started happening. Operation Payback led to dozens of prosecutions. People who thought anonymity protected them discovered that digital forensics could trace DDoS attacks, that ISPs kept logs, that coordinated operations left trails. Some Anonymous members were teenagers who didn't understand the consequences. They'd participated in DDoS attacks thinking it was a game, a prank, an act of civil disobedience. Then FBI agents showed up at their doors with warrants. Others were sophisticated hackers who knew exactly what they were risking and did it anyway. Some went to prison. Others went underground. A few became informants. The decentralized structure that made Anonymous impossible to destroy also made it impossible to protect. Anyone could claim to be anonymous. Anyone could launch an operation under the banner. which meant law enforcement couldn't shut down the organization because there was no organization to shut down, but they could arrest individuals. And they did. By 2012, many of the early Chanology organizers had moved on, some to other activist causes, some away from activism entirely. A few became LulzSec, a splinter group that focused on spectacular hacks for entertainment value rather than political goals. That ended badly for most of them. Project Chanology itself gradually faded. The monthly protests became quarterly, then sporadic. The Church of Scientology, though damaged, adapted. They learned to operate in a post-anonymous world where information couldn't be completely controlled but could be managed. They stopped trying to scrub the internet clean and instead flooded it with positive content. Celebrity endorsements, humanitarian campaigns, disaster relief efforts. The strategy wasn't to hide anymore, but to create enough noise that the negative coverage got buried in the feed. It worked to a degree. But the genie couldn't be put back in the bottle. Former Scientologists continued speaking out, protected now by the precedent Anonymous set. Documentaries like Going Clear could be made without participants fearing they'd face harassment alone. Journalists could report on Scientology's practices without feeling like they were risking their careers in solitary combat. Anonymous created space for accountability. And the tactics they pioneered, information warfare, coordinated online and offline action, the use of anonymity as both shield and weapon, became standard tools for digital activism. Every hacktivist operation since owes something to Project Chanology. Every protest movement that adopts masks, every collective that organizes anonymously, every campaign that uses leaked documents to expose institutional abuse, they're all descendants of that moment in 2008 when a bunch of internet trolls decided to declare war on a church. Was it perfect activism? No. Anonymous operations were often chaotic, sometimes illegal, occasionally counterproductive. The DDoS attacks could be argued as digital vandalism rather than legitimate protest. The harassment of individual Scientologists who hadn't personally done anything wrong raised ethical questions. But it was effective. The Church of Scientology survived Project Chanology, but they never fully recovered their aura of invincibility. The secrecy that was their power became their prison. The intimidation tactics that silenced critics for decades became evidence of cult-like behavior. Anonymous proved something important, that in the digital age, traditional power structures have vulnerabilities. That information wants to be free. That you can't fight an idea with lawyers and private investigators. The masks are still out there, at protests, at demonstrations, anywhere people want to stand against power while remaining anonymous. And somewhere, on some image board, someone is planning the next operation. Because Anonymous never ended. Project Chanology was just the beginning. The moment when the internet learned it could fight back. Today, more than 15 years after Project Chanology began, the world it helped create is everywhere. The Church of Scientology still exists. They still own massive properties in Clearwater, Los Angeles, and around the world. They still have celebrity members, though fewer than before. Tom Cruise remains loyal. But the roster has thinned. The mystique has faded. New recruits are harder to find. When potential members Google Scientology, they find everything Anonymous leaked. The OT levels, the abuse allegations, the disconnection stories, the financial exploitation. All of it indexed, archived, permanent. The church's response was to build a $50 million media center, to produce their own content, to flood social media with positive messaging. But you can't SEO your way out of the truth when it's been distributed across 10,000 websites and burned into the internet's collective memory. Membership continues to decline. Former members estimate active Scientologists number in the tens of thousands globally, not the millions the church claims. Entire facilities sit empty, purchased during better times, now monuments to a fading movement. Anonymous did that. Not alone. Former members like Leah Remini and Mike Rinder deserve credit for speaking out. Journalists like Lawrence Wright and documentarians like Alex Gibney deserve credit for investigating. But Anonymous created the conditions that made all of that possible. They broke the fear. For decades, criticizing Scientology meant facing an organization that would devote unlimited resources to destroying you. They'd sue you into bankruptcy, follow you, harass your family, get you fired, ruin your reputation. Anonymous proved you could fight back. That masks and anonymity could protect you. That a swarm of individuals was harder to stop than a single critic. That precedent changed everything. The Guy Fawkes mask became ubiquitous. Occupy Wall Street protesters wore them in 2011. Anti-government demonstrations in Thailand, Turkey, Brazil, all featured the masks. It became shorthand for resistance, for speaking truth to power while remaining anonymous. The mask's meaning evolved beyond anonymous, beyond Project Scientology. It became a symbol of digital age activism itself, of the idea that ordinary people could organize, could resist, could make powerful institutions uncomfortable. Some purists from 4chan hated that. They'd created anonymous as chaos, not a movement. The commodification of the Guy Fawkes mask, sold at every Halloween store, worn by people who'd never heard of 4chan, felt like betrayal. But that's what happens when you create a symbol and release it into the wild. It takes on its own life, its own meaning. Anonymous became bigger than any individual image board or operation. The tactics pioneered during Scientology spread globally. DDoS attacks became a common form of protest. Doxing, releasing private information about targets, became a weapon, though an ethically questionable one. Coordinated leak campaigns became standard. WikiLeaks built an entire organization around the information warfare model Anonymous demonstrated. Edward Snowden's NSA leaks followed the template. Expose institutional secrets. Let the public decide. The Panama Papers. The Paradise Papers. Every major leak operation since 2008 owes something to the precedent Anonymous set. But the legacy is complicated. The same tools Anonymous used against Scientology have been weaponized by less noble actors. State-sponsored hackers, criminal groups, political operatives. The DDoS attacks that took down Scientology's websites are the same attacks used to silence independent media in authoritarian countries. The doxing that exposed abusive Scientology officials has been used to target journalists, activists, and ordinary people. The harassment tactics Anonymous deployed against the church have been copied by online mobs targeting individuals for perceived offenses. Anonymous opened Pandora's box. The tools of digital activism and the tools of digital harassment are often identical. The anonymity that protects activists also shields abusers, and Anonymous itself fractured. After Scientology, different factions pursued different goals. Some focused on political activism, Arab Spring, Occupy Wall Street, fighting censorship. Others pursued lulls, hacking for entertainment, trolling for chaos. Some became explicitly ideological, fighting for free speech, against surveillance, for transparency. There's no unified Anonymous anymore. Maybe there never was. Just thousands of people claiming the same label, pursuing different agendas, operating independently. Some of the early Scientology participants ended up in prison. Others became respectable activists. A few wrote books about their experiences. Many just moved on with their lives. Their involvement in the most significant early digital activism movement, a weird chapter they tell friends about at parties. I helped take down Scientology's website is a hell of an icebreaker. The Church of Scientology learned from Scientology too. They stopped trying to control all information and started competing in the information space. They hired social media experts, built professional PR campaigns, learned to operate in a world where their secrets would always leak. They became less aggressive legally, not because they wanted to, but because the Anonymous playbook proved that aggressive litigation generated more negative publicity than it stopped. Better to ignore critics than make them martyrs. In some ways, both sides won. Scientology survived. Anonymous proved digital activism could work. The internet became a more contested space. Information became harder to suppress, but also harder to control. And the questions Project Scientology raised remain unanswered. Where's the line between activism and harassment? Between exposing abuse and vigilante justice? When does anonymity protect the vulnerable, and when does it enable the cruel? Who decides what secrets deserve to be leaked and what privacy deserves protection? These aren't abstract questions. They're the defining tensions of digital life. Every major platform struggles with them. Every government wrestles with them. Every activist movement confronts them. Project Scientology didn't resolve these tensions. It exposed them, made them unavoidable. The Church of Scientology thought they could censor a Tom Cruise video. They triggered a movement that changed how power and information interact in the digital age. Anonymous thought they were just trolling a cult. They invented modern hacktivism. Neither got what they expected, but the world got something it needed. Proof that institutions couldn't control information anymore, that secrets would leak, that anonymous individuals could organize and challenge power structures. The masks are still out there. in protests, in demonstrations, in the collective consciousness as a symbol of resistance. And somewhere, right now, on some image board or Discord server or encrypted chat, someone is planning the next operation, learning from Chanology's successes and failures, adapting the tactics, evolving the approach. Because the war Anonymous declared in 2008 never really ended, it just expanded. Every leaked document, every exposed corruption, every time ordinary people organize anonymously to challenge powerful institutions. That's the legacy of Project Chanology. The Church of Scientology tried to silence the internet. Instead, they taught it how to fight. And the internet has a long memory. Knowledge is free. We are anonymous, we are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.